We're now officially recording, and I welcome you to this week's weekly chat on crisis communications. All of our chats are about sharing ideas and building community. And of course, we want you to stay in touch with us. We're putting together programs on a regular basis. We have a really wonderful one coming up next week, which is going to be related to the DEI conversation that is going on all around us. So check the website at PRSAMD.org to stay in touch with all of our meetings and events, and of course, follow us. I am Peggy Hoffman. I am with the chapter, but I am not the expert here today, and I'm super delighted that our board member, a past president, and a principal with Van Eperen, partner with Van Eperen, will be able to guide us in a conversation ever so important to us today, crisis communications. So I'm going to pass the screen over to Jeff Davis.
Oh, great. Thank you. And let me get started here, see if it works. Hold on. I'm sharing my Zoom intro, so sorry about that. Peggy, help me out with this.
Okay, sure. So just go ahead and will it allow you to toggle, to do Alt-Tab, to toggle through the windows till you get the one you want? No? Okay.
No.
Okay, why don't you stop the screen share and we'll go again.
Because it was working.
And then no, we know it's working. So when you go up, just go ahead. When you do the screen share, just go ahead and put your cursor over your slide deck and then hit share. So many of you were kind enough to give us some questions, and Jeff has taken his slide deck and rearranged a little bit of it so that he could do that. Okay, try it one more time. If not, I'll put the slides up, and then if we need to, you tell me when to move.
We might have to do that because I do not like having people. How about this?
There we go. Hey, now I'll just hit your slow. Yeah, there you go. You're on.
Okay. I can do it. All right. Thank you all for joining us today. There's a lot to cover in the brief period we have, so we're gonna cover a lot. And if people want information sent to them, I can do that. My name is Jeff Davis with Van Eperen, and on Twitter I am Contact Jeff if anybody's going to live tweet. So let's start with some big picture, and then we'll drill into some real examples of what's going on. But what is a crisis? There's an internal and an external view. So the internal view is that it's something that threatens your ability to keep in business, achieve your mission. But that's not something that's externally understood or discussed. Externally, it's what puts your organization's values on trial in the court of public opinion, and that's a bit different. So keep those two things in mind, and then some realities of a crisis. Whether or not you like it, your values will be communicated, and it's the time that you're going to have them undergo public scrutiny. And this is the next slide. We'll dive into this even deeper. You can't just say things and then move on and check a box. It must be reinforced by behavior. And then a final point, and this is what somebody brought up in the pre-webinar survey. It's sometimes difficult internally to have a crisis communications discussion, especially just with a organization that doesn't want to hear it from PR people. So sometimes it can help to bring in a third-party consultant, a PR firm, or somebody external who can deliver the negative.
But we could do in the morning. When is she free? When is she free?
And then somebody's not on mute. So let's go right into something that's currently in the news. The Black Lives Matter don't know if anybody knows Jessica Watson, a local Black designer. We use her for design projects. This is a tweet from her yesterday. Dear companies addressing Black Lives Matter, less templated emails about your solidarity will help, but we want more actions that actually show your solidarity so we don't have to question it. She brings up a great point. You know, people putting out a statement and, you know, using hashtags, it's like jumping on the latest meme and thinking and feeling good about it. That's not going to work in this case. So, and Jess has done a great job of reminding us of that. So we're going to come back to that a little bit later. Another reality about the crisis is people are paying close attention to you. Your employees want to know what you're saying. You know, the media, obviously, competitors, guess what? They're taking screenshots. They're taking notes of everything you're doing. So don't even think twice about that. Neighbors, family members. We're doing some work in the seniors housing community or industry, and family members of residents of CCRCs and nursing homes. You know, they're very close to, they want to know exactly what's going on. And again, like competitors, critics, they're, as I said, they're screenshotting everything you say and do, and they're going to use it against you. So you need to be ready and have good messaging. Basics of crisis. You want people to think and know that you care. And this is when you're crafting a crisis statement or you know, taking action. They want to feel that you care, you're doing something. Always in a crisis statement, mention, you know, what you're doing to prevent a recurrence of what's going on. You want to say that you're accountable and responsible, and that you'll be part of the solution. So if you really look at a good crisis communications statement, those elements are in it. Another area, messaging strategy. Make sure you have a media policy so the company knows exactly who should be talking to the media. Make sure they're trained. You don't want them to wing it during a difficult situation. You want to have had that person gone through a media training session in the privacy of your conference room, so you can make all those mistakes and I misspoke. Well, let's misspeak in the conference room and get it right. I've seen that so many times where, you know, man, if you were doing this live, it would not have gone well. So do video media training sessions anytime you can. And then when we prepare our spokespeople for questions, I always categorize them into easy questions. So tell me about your company. What do you guys do? Then so-so questions, you dive down into, okay, that's a little, now you're getting, you know, a little bit beneath the surface. And then I always like to rehearse gotcha questions. And usually those gotcha questions never come up, but at least your spokesperson will not be shocked when they hear that question, and they will also have an answer. So if you ever go through media training, make sure you pepper in a range of questions and also show them what the answers are too. So that's part of your messaging strategy. Again, you don't even have time for this after the crisis has started. I did one crisis two and a half years ago where the CEO had to come over to our office for emergency crisis spokesperson training. And, you know, yes, he needed it and it was useful, but that's not when you want to do it. Crisis specifics make news. So all of us in PR know, you know, when you get the questions from the media, they're going to want the numbers. How many were fired? How much was extorted? What was the value of the damage? They're going to ask. So either be aware of that they're going to ask or have an answer. As we all know, you know, the media is everywhere and they're collecting information in various ways. It may not be from your official spokesperson. Here, this is an older tweet when this was relatively new. They're going to put out questions and you know, early on in a story, anybody who has information will contribute, could be part of that story. You want to be part of that story, or somebody else will be part of that story. A good example of that is we did the PR for an apartment explosion in Silver Spring a couple of years ago, and the media was asked, our spokesperson was not ready to talk yet, but so the media was asking people walking down the sidewalk, what did you hear? Did you smell gas? Did you see anything? And that person's uninformed information was good enough, and it went into the news. So that's just how it works. Other questions to expect, anybody who is in journalism knows the 5 WH, who, what, when, where, why, and how. So these are, we all know these, but you have to be ready for them. Here's another example just to prove the point. A train accident, the media is going to gather the information from anybody they can. So crisis communications, one of the first things is the statement. And I always recommend having a broad general holding statement just to get things started. But what you need to have in it is an acknowledgement that you are aware. So it could even be a tweet that says, we are aware of the explosion that took place at our Hagerstown plant. We will provide more information when when it becomes available, up on Twitter or up on your website. That way the media isn't thinking, wow, they're clueless. They have no idea. They don't even know what's going on. This makes the statement that, yes, you do. Starts the process. Another piece of it is human element. The statements that get trashed are the ones that are real cold and express no human point of view, and it just gets you off to the wrong start. Speaking of that, I'm sure we all remember the physician who was reaccommodated, the word was used, from the airplane involuntarily. And United was the airline, and this was the first statement that they came out with, and it got trashed. I'll just point out a few things. This is an upsetting event to all of us here at United. So you start off with oh, I'm so sorry you all feel so bad at United. So that's the first mistake. I apologize for having to reaccommodate these customers. Well, there's a nice industry buzzword that I had never even heard of. And it just goes downhill from there. So that's just this is a good example of how it didn't work out. We're moving fast. We're trying to reach the person, and we want to resolve this. There were 2 or 3 other statements that came out later, but here's the one that once the PR team got involved, notice the difference in these statements. Just the first 3 or 4 words: the truly horrific event that occurred. Look how they talk about outrage, anger, and disappointment. So there's the human element. My deepest apologies. See how different that is compared to the reaccommodation and we're all upset here. We take full responsibility. We will make it right. So anyway, you can take time to look at this in more detail, but this is a good example of starting off one way. Maybe it was the CEO and the legal team did this. Who knows? But I know this is when one of the PR firms was part of it. Another issue with crisis is the lack of speed. And the longer you draw it out, the longer and worse it gets for you. As the media is not going to say, okay, well, when you're ready to talk, give us a call and we can do an update story. No, they're going to keep going with this, and you need to have something. Even if it's, we will have a press conference at 1 p.m. to provide the latest update, or drip out information just to show that you're trying and you have information to share. Sometimes if you can get it all out, instantly, within a couple hours of something happening, it may, the media will feel that they've reported it. the audiences have received, you know, the information. Maybe there's no more to it, and they'll move on to the next issue of the day, which happens a lot in today's news cycles. The other common mistake is poor messaging, kind of what we just saw with the United, and also putting the news media ahead of your own employees. You know, if you can, let them know what's going on. This varies based on the type of organization you have, but if you let your employees know what's going on, they are your ambassadors if they trust you, and they are the ones talking to their neighbors. And if they have it accurately, straight from the source, it's just more people out there who are getting your story out there. This is Amy Cooper. For anybody who might not have seen the story, this is the story from just a few. Well, actually, it was Memorial Day. She was in Central Park with her dog off a leash, and a bird watcher was out there watching birds, and the dog was running through brush that the birds typically use, and he asked her to put the dog back on the leash, and she went at him with racist comment, called 911, said she was going to be attacked by a African American, and so I assume many of you saw that news. The point that I'm making here is, an employee can be out in Central Park on a walk, and you could be pulled right into this issue. And I know somebody who worked on the PR crisis part of this, and it was literally on that day, on Memorial Day, and this supports the discussion about speed. So that interaction took place, you know, during the daylight, but Amy worked for Franklin Templeton, and they put this statement out, and you can see it was posted at 10:43 p.m. We do not condone the racism. We're in the process of investigating, and she has been put on administrative leave. So for a company as big as Franklin Templeton, I think that's fairly quick. I mean, I guess it could have been quicker. I know there was a number of PR firms that were part of discussing this, but this is a good an example of, you know, getting something up there quickly. Then the next day, following our internal review, we made a decision to terminate the employee effective immediately. We do not tolerate racism of any kind at Franklin Templeton. So that was the next day. There were lots, as you can see, there were 61,000 retweets, 292,000 likes. So, and there were many, many, many comments, but the comment you can see from Florida Chris is typical of some of the comments that are out there. So that's a real life last couple weeks example. Let me find the it keeps going. So here is an employee of it's called MadetoOrder, a logo distribution type of a company, and he was riding his bike on a trail in Bethesda, came upon a family and with a young teen who was posting George Floyd posters along the trail. He got up, he challenged the family. He went after the young girl, ripped the posters out of her hand, and ran over the adult who was with them. So this is a tweet from one of the police departments looking for him, and they did eventually find him. And here's MadetoOrder Ink's tweet. We discovered one of our employees engaged in disturbing blah 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 behavior, and then they posted their statement right there. That was like, soon after. So the point I want to make is you don't really know when this kind of crisis is going to hit you, and it's something it's hard to plan for, but you need to be ready. And Twitter is pretty much the best way to be ready. I'm trying to find the and then after they posted that, they had some other tweets about their take on the issue and indefensible conduct. So that's what just another recent example. I'm going to shift now to crisis plans a little bit. This happened about, it was a number of years ago. People in Baltimore remember there was an earthquake, not, horrible, but it was an earthquake, and everybody in this business on Pratt Street was evacuated. And the person I knew looked to his coworker and said, "Where's the crisis plan?" And the coworker said, "Oh, it's in my office on the, whatever floor it was, 10th floor." And they had to wing it on the sidewalk on Pratt Street. What should we do first? Who should we call? How do we approach this? And that's when I started talking about, is your crisis plan still in a 3-ring binder? Yeah, you need one. And if you've worked with crisis plans, they have, I've seen them hundreds of pages long. I've seen them 80 pages long, a lot of detail, contact information, scenarios, all kinds of internal documents. But you're not going to walk around with those at lunch. You're not going to have it handy all the time. So you need to have a version that is accessible and mobile. So what to include in the mobile plan, and I'll show you an example of one. You could have scenarios in your big binder plan, but in my experience, things don't happen, or the crises that happen you never would have thought of. One time, a long time ago, it was the All-Star game in Baltimore. There was a giant inflatable ball on top of the Baltimore Convention Center that was attached to a generator. Well, that ball blew off the top of the convention center, and the generator was pulled with it, and it hit a gentleman in the head, and he was injured, and he was okay eventually. But who in the world would have had, giant ball blows off roof as a possible scenario? That's why I say, be aware of possibilities, but when you have your crisis plan in place or ready, have levels. And I'll show levels in another slide, but small, minor, medium, super catastrophe was one way to look at it. Also in the mobile plan, have team members identified. Who do we talk to, from security to executive team to the CFO team to communications, and what their roles and responsibilities are. Have those template statements ready to go, so at least you're not starting from scratch. At least you have something to build on. Current contact information, and a big stumbling block a lot of times is social media password. Oh my God, who has the Twitter password? We need that now. Make sure you have access to that. Again, it's just a Band-Aid. It's not the full-blown plan. Here is what I'm showing you on the screen now is one of the first pages of a mobile plan, and it just tells you, here's your first few steps on what to do. Contact the public safety group, report the incident, consult the right section of this plan, and then in this case, I had emergency event, significant event, and major event. And what you do is you scroll in, like the yellow level 2, there's a whole yellow section of the plan that pictures a long scroll. You go to the yellow section and you follow the steps. So emergency event with this was maybe an injury at a plant, a worker falls off a ladder, a minor incident, police might be called, rescue might be called, not a big deal, but the PR department might get a call from the media on it. Number 2 is more significant or threshold event, like a death, cyber terrorism, maybe a major fire, explosion, a management issue, misconduct. I did one where there was insider trading by one of the company's executives. And then level 1 would be something like a hurricane, earthquake, multiple fatalities. This is, I'm going to try to show you. This is what it looks like on a mobile device, and you would just scroll. So picture that the 3-ring binder plan, but in a long format that you can scroll and access the contact information, access the this template statements. It's all there, and it's meant for you when you're standing at the mall, when you're on the sideline of your daughter's field hockey game, where it happened for me, at least to get the ball rolling. So mobile plans, in my opinion, are very important to have. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the current issues. COVID and Black Lives Matter are obviously the two big ones. With COVID, it's we've moved from in March we were all talking about how to prepare for the what you're doing to prepare, and what sources you're encouraging employees to look at, and when are we going to close, that kind of thing. Now we're more in the when will we reopen, and what will will our new policies be? What will the offices look like? And that's the kind of communications that's going on now. Because of HIPAA, you can't really communicate details about individuals, but you can communicate audiences. So, as I said, one of our projects is in the seniors housing industry, and you really need to communicate, to residents of the long-term care facility, employees. A big one is family members. They want to know exactly what's going on. So what we've used and seen used is Facebook groups, like a private Facebook groups for families, Zoom calls, and conference calls to give updates to the families and key audiences. What I'm seeing with workplaces, it's heavy posters, signage, like this, physical distancing reminder signage, sanitation stations, emails, of course. Our Baltimore office had a Zoom call with the other tenants in the office. It was earlier this week. They had one at 11 and one at 3, and they went through all the details. So you've got the stickers, you've got the guest policies, bring your own mug. It was one thing that they went into. So communications with COVID is more now in that realm, and you could do an entire seminar on that topic. Some of the best practices with crisis is, have the risk assessment take place, so you identify the possible scenarios, have your sessions to review the plan. And so many times I've seen a plan that is 2 years old, 3 years old. It's not going to be of much value the day you get that call. So make sure it's updated. Internal team members are identified, media or influencer, key people that you need to reach, their lists are there, the templates, and then, as I just said, the mobile version, and then the media and speaker training for the spokespeople. As I said, you don't want to wing it when it's a crisis. And then something else to keep in mind is, in managing a crisis, it's not in your control. You can't say, okay, it's done. We've done our part. This is over. No, you can't assume that or even declare that it's over. It's not over until your audience says so, or things really wind down. So keep that in mind. Your execs might say, well, okay, we put out the release, we put out the statement. What else can we do? It's done, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe it's a lot of monitoring that has to take place. And again, we did have a half hour, so that was a lot to cover. The next few slides are resources for you, and they're local resources, and it's more on the Black Lives Matter, which is the one topic that we're all talking about a lot now. And this is from the CEO of Fearless, local tech company that we work next to, actually, in our Baltimore office. And if you go to their Twitter account, this is one of the most recent tweets, so you can access the article. But Delali has put together a really, if you're saying, well, what should we do? I want to help. I want to be sensitive. I want to do the right thing. He has put it there in technically. So take a look at that. And then Jess, who I talked about earlier, she also wrote an article. It also appears in Technically. So go to her Twitter and you can access this. But it's not step by step, but resource by resource by resource, what you can do during, as you're formulating your plan. And it's not, oh, let's contribute with a meme or a cool graphic that says we support Black Lives Matter and move on. No, there's more. And look at her hashtag, do the work. And in this, it's interesting, my daughter, who just graduated from college, class of 2020, and had an unusual graduation, all of her friends have a book club, and they had a different book set up for last week, and she showed me the email where they canceled that book, and this is the book they elected to read. And so Isabel and I have both purchased the book. I'm on page 17, so I don't have a full report to give you, but I'm taking that step too. So if you're looking for things to do, how do I become culturally involved? I want to do the right thing. Those three things I just showed you from Delali and Jess and this book are steps you could take. And then finally, I'll give credit to Emily McDermott from Van Eperen, who she retweeted this, I think it was yesterday, and it's a series called Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And go to this Twitter account, and it's like it's a 12-minute interview, and he's doing a series of these uncomfortable conversations. Tune in and you'll learn something. And there's a lot that needs to be done. So I share those 4 resources as this is a topical event in our lives. And I think that's the end. So I can answer questions. If you want to reach out to me, I'm jeff@vaneperen.com, or follow me on Twitter or contact Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. We had a number of questions that came in, and I'm wondering, why don't you, let's go to a great view there, and let's talk through some of these questions, because I think that you touched on a number of them, but I happened to, I saw one that came in, I believe, from Sarah, who said, how do you handle multiple crises at the same time? Because it's certainly, if this time isn't, we're handling multiple crises. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you can't say, well, get in line, we'll get to you next. So you have to do what you can with the resources you have. So I don't know what that is. Is it, we're going to do 12-hour days? Is it, do you prioritize in some way? Do you bring in help? One municipality brought us in to help them just for that reason. They wanted us on standby. So if something happened, they can just bring us in. So I think it's the reality, though. You have to deal with it. You can't ignore it. So it's do it, put in the hours, or get help.
So it's almost like knowing who your go-to person is that you can bring in is going to be part of your crisis communications. If I get to this point, I'm going to have to bring someone in. It's part of that prep. Yeah,
and it's also, be aware of your resources. Say, oh, we have 2 people in our communications department. We have a plan. We can deal with the reactive, or we can deal with, or actually what usually happens is, internal people are dealing with meetings and, internal issues and processes, and, they don't have the time to do the on the ground work. So it's not easy, and never in anybody's life on this call have we had this level of situation going on. It just never has happened.
Right. And staying with this notion of having your resources and knowing and how to be best prepared, someone had asked, so how much health information needs to be communicated? So it kind of gets to that larger question of how much do I actually need to communicate? But with the pandemic and everything else, can you sort of suggest some ideas around health?
Some of it is guided by law. I can't get into the details because I don't know them, but like the Center for Medicaid Services, CMS, there's certain requirements for nursing homes on reporting. So that, that's not a should we or shouldn't we. So when there's government oversight, it's not your call. I was deeply involved in the nursing home situation, and I saw, there were various levels. Some were posting, regular statements on their website identifying, maybe not names, but, a 93-year-old resident of our SNF, contracted it and passed away, and our deepest condolences. So they were getting close and actually not naming, but describing people. But then I was seeing in the media, there were nursing homes that were not even providing basic stats. So part of it has to do with your company's leadership and what they're comfortable with, and also part of it is legal. What are you required to put out there? HIPAA obviously prevents you from doing it. I don't know why you would do it anyway, but prevents you from putting out private information anyway.
And sort of speaking of this, you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out what do I need to say or want to say, but what happens when the communication you decide on upsets some, upsets some, but others say, "Oh, this is exactly right," and we're seeing that a lot right now in the with the Black Lives Matter. Someone says, "Oh, you did a great job." Someone else says, "Blah."
Yeah, and I guess that we have to live with that. And number one, do the right thing. Now, somebody who doesn't like it will say, "Well, you didn't do the right thing." So do the right thing that to the best of your ability. But it's something, topic like this, it's not everybody's going to just say, "Great, thank you all." What a beautiful statement. It's just not going to happen. So you have to do your best and brace yourself, because as we all know in PR, you look at the Facebook comments on even a topic you didn't think was that controversial, and you'll see major different sides to it. So my best advice is have good solid guidance and do the right thing. I think we've had some discussions earlier, and one of the points made was being silent is not the right thing right now. And I made a big deal out of, okay, but let's not do the meme of the week and check a box and move on. So there's got to be something with substance to it.
There we go. Just start talking. The other question that came in, it's sort of carrying down this journey here of this thing is, how comfortable should we be in questioning our upper management about their tactics and initiatives on how a company is openly acting? So kind of thing, maybe sometimes the discord or the that wasn't a good message, it might come internally, but you're having to get the folks. It's I guess what happened at United at some point, right? When the PR people.
Yeah, that's one thing I've learned is crisis communications is the time when the C-suite sees the value of communications, but that's if you're acting as a counselor, not an order taker, I'll write a press release, do you want me to do this brochure, but more of a counselor. And if it's good, wise counsel, they say, "Wow, you guys were really key to this. You brought a point of view that we hadn't thought of," or that's a really good point. So again, you need to have the relationship, or at least the access to the C-suite. The other thing I touched on it was sometimes people like me are brought in temporarily, and we can make the statements that you don't want to say. We can do the media training and say, and be real critical of the boss, and because we're going to be fired anyway, or our job's going to be over, and we're going to move on. You're still going to be there. We can be the bad guys that say, you said every other word, or you need to fix this or that. Same thing with crisis. I can be as blunt as needed, and I'm going to be gone anyway. And so that sometimes that's a good reason just to bring in somebody who, and you can say, well, I didn't agree with what he said either, and we're gone, but that's fine. That's how it works. But what I've noticed is the CEO level, they really appreciate us, because a lot of times all they've been dealing with is the CFO or the attorney, and we bring a different point. What I always like to think is we're straddling both sides, the public and the inside. We're the ones that say, you know what, the public is saying this, or we need to consider this side of it.
So we are coming with 2 minutes left, and I've got a number of other questions. So I'm going to suggest that I'll ask another one, and then maybe we can get you to give us some sage advice that we can put on a blog post. I'm going to go with one that I think probably feels a little bit like a real here and now, and it's getting at this notion of how an organization works with its own internal communities in a crisis. The question is, why should organizations address issues like returning to work with employees if they have no real answers? And it's close to another one that was asked, which is what is the internal messaging to employees, and how valuable or where does that fit in crisis communications? And I guess my sort of related follow-up is, would you have a crisis communication plan that says, here's my communications internally and externally? But getting that question of, if you don't have any real answers, what to do?
You do have something is going on, and it might be we're not doing anything, or we don't know. Now, do you want to be that transparent and say, well, we don't really know? Maybe you could take a step that says, we've assembled this team, and we're currently working through the reopening process. And as soon as we have that in place, we're going to post it on the intranet, and we're going to share it, and however you're going to do it. Now, if you literally have no idea and nothing you're going to do, that's a different, that's an entirely different major problem, because I can't imagine a company has no clue. So at least your clue is, we're working on it, and let people know, and then like drip it out and say, we're going to be posting updates, and some of the steps that I had talked through. On the employee side of internal crisis communications, it is really important, because, as I said earlier, the employee is at the grocery store. They talk to neighbors. Neighbors know you work at XYZ company, and if you have the real information, you're going to say, oh, don't believe everything. Don't believe that rumor, or don't believe what that paper said. Here's the story. I got a email from the CEO, and this is what's happening. So internal audiences are key.
Great. There's a couple more questions in the chat, and what I'll suggest to folks is that I am going to save the chat and get that to Jeff so he can take a look at that and do that. I'm going to end with one question that's in here that I think is kind of interesting, because I think it comes back to us as we prepare on this ongoing crisis, and that is, how much do practitioners or people pulling together plans consider theory? So where is theory in this whole conversation? I'm going to ask you to do that in a nanosecond, so that I can then, and I'm giving Lisa a heads up. Lisa, I'd love to have you say hello to everybody. But Jeff, you got, I'm going to do what they do on the radio. Jeff, in 10 seconds.
Advanced communications theory, it would be the, you identify the, the audience, and have the right messaging, and have the right transmittal forms, and make it quick. It's more tactical than theory, but that's 10 seconds.
Yeah. All right, great. Jeff, thank you. Awesome. Lisa.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Peggy. I appreciate it. Thank you all for being online with us today. I hope this was helpful. Next week, we have another weekly chat. It will be Thursday afternoon. The topic will be racism within our ranks and what leadership can do to change it. So please join us. We have it all over social and on our website. So thank you, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed.